I am sharing this information here because my circumstances and actions prevent me from fully disclosing the news to those close to me on the 1st of December. I received the results of tests that confirmed I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Consequently, this will be my last holiday season. I have come to terms with this reality and am at peace with what is to come. I have lived a fulfilling life and am confident that my loved ones will be taken care of. As I am a private person, my wife Jane was unaware of the results of my medical tests. I did not wish to cause her unnecessary concern until I had received further information and therefore decided to return home to discuss the matter in person. It is not a topic I would have preferred to discuss by telephone or text message. That afternoon, I arrived at the house to find one of my business partner's cars in the driveway. It was a particularly ostentatious and expensive vehicle with a personalized license plate. The vehicle in question displayed a license plate that was completely unexpected and unusual. Upon checking the home camera system on my phone, I discovered that it was in privacy mode and not recording. Consequently, I decided to leave it as it was and drove off to my farm property. Our camera system is primarily for safety purposes and I rarely check it unless there is a reason for concern. However, I also utilize the outside cameras to observe wildlife and watch storms passing through, simply for my own satisfaction. For my own satisfaction, I set up a separate video recorder years ago to store the camera footage locally. I do not have access to that storage on my phone, so when I was at the farm, I turned on my computer and accessed the other server to confirm what my instincts were telling me. I was correct in my assumption, as the recordings showed the animals snuggling in the living room, enjoying wine, dancing, and then heading to the bedroom suite. It seems they left the doors open. The microphone was able to record their activities after they moved out of the camera's view. Given the limited time I have remaining, I am seeking answers. You may refer to me by any name you wish, but that afternoon, the devotion and love I had for her vanished. I am experiencing a range of emotions, as one might expect. I know that I am not at fault. I have been a loyal, romantic and attentive partner. Now, I am shifting my focus to myself. I conducted an evaluation of my priorities and consulted with my lawyer. We reviewed my will and the prenuptial agreement. I informed him of the circumstances. We discussed the duration and extent of the affair. The findings were distressing. It is now apparent that I was not fully aware of the woman I had spent over 2 decades with. It seems that something within her has changed. At this time, I have decided not to inform my children. My wife and I never had children. I will endeavor to maintain a brave facade throughout the forthcoming holiday season. My intention is to create enduring memories with my children and grandchildren. I will play the role of a loving father and grandfather and then attempt to maintain the facade of a devoted husband. In order to address some common questions, I will provide some background information. The affair partner is a widower and is not remarried, while he is a businessman. Partner, it should be noted that I am not friends with the mother of my twins, M and F, in the traditional sense. I prefer not to mix business with personal relationships. It is also worth mentioning that I never married her. She made the decision not to marry me, and I fully agree with her that it was the right choice at that time. When my children were 7, their mother, Sarah, married a wonderful man named Steve. Sarah and Steve did not have children together. However, when my children were 3, I had a wake. I became involved in their lives and endeavored to become the father I had aspired to be. Sarah and I co-parented effectively and I consider Steve a friend. We are now in our 60s, while Jane, my wife, is almost 60. AP is in his 50s, both Jane and I are in our first marriage, having married in our 30s. Sarah and I were young when we had the twins, who were a surprise, but who we always wanted. Now the twins are in their 40s and we have grandchildren in their teens and older age groups every year. Our Christmas celebration lasts for a whole week. We gather on the farm and once everyone is here, we head out to cut down a tree. We decorate, cook, play, and enjoy the festivities as a family. Sarah and Steve have been part of this tradition since I have purchased the farm and have decided to keep the situation confidential until after the new year. If I were to inform Sarah, she would be unable to keep it a secret. I do not wish to put Steve in a position where he has to lie to his wife. My focus is on ensuring that the children and grandchildren have a joyful week together. Jane's presence will be a minor detail in the grand scheme of things. To be frank, I do not care about her as much as I care about the rest of the family. The financial aspect is the circumstances surrounding Jane and my meeting and subsequent marriage are particularly intriguing. We were both well established in our careers and financially secure. She had a good job with an excellent pension plan, in addition to which she had received 2 inheritances that were placed in a trust from the beginning. We agreed not to disclose our entire net worth to each other, mainly because she insisted on it. We also have a prenuptial agreement that states any property or trust established before our marriage, as well as any income generated from those assets, is not considered shared property. This was at her insistence. Now, I am the one providing both properties, including housing and utilities. I cover the expenses for travel, food, and fuel. Essentially, I support her entirely. As for her income and wealth, she spends it on herself. She buys her own car, clothes, and takes personal trips. She even gets cosmetic surgeries on the outside. She may appear beautiful, but her actions have revealed her ugly side. A few days after receiving my diagnosis, I made the decision to retire from the non-profit organization. Once I announced it, I noticed that Jane seemed a bit uneasy. I can understand why. With my retirement, I'll be around more often. Tomorrow will be my last day of work. From then on, I'll be focusing on spending time with my family. I shared the camera server information with my lawyer, and once I had made the announcement, I observed that Jane appeared somewhat uneasy. I can understand why, given that my retirement will result in me being around more often. Tomorrow will be my last day of work, after which I will be focusing on spending time with my family. I have shared the camera server information with my lawyer. I granted him access from his office, so I am unaware of any further activities. However, I would not be surprised if they did occur at this point. I am indifferent to the matter. I am aware of my identity and the value I bring to the table. This other individual, AP, represents a significant decline in quality despite AP's ostentatious lifestyle. I prefer to maintain a low profile. It is pertinent to note that I drive a 15-year-old pickup truck and wear jeans and t-shirts. It is evident that AP does not possess the wealth that Jane believes he does. This is evidenced by the fact that the trust has invested in his business and I receive quarterly financial reports. I do not disclose the exact amount of my wealth to anyone except my accountants. However, it is worth noting that the trust has been growing for the past 30 years. I live a modest life, and there is enough wealth for my great-great-grandchildren to enjoy the farm and have their education taken care of. Once Jane realizes what she has lost, it will be her own reckoning. I will not be there to witness it. December has been quite busy with our usual social engagements on the weekends. AP was present at one of the parties, and it was challenging not to keep an eye on Jane and him. My life is modest, and there is sufficient wealth for my great-great-grandchildren to enjoy the farm and have their education funded. Once Jane realizes what she has lost, it will be her own reckoning. I will not be present to witness it. December has been quite busy with our usual social engagements on the weekends. AP was present at one of the parties, and it was challenging not to keep an eye on Jane and him. I believe that I was not discovered in the midst of the chaos and the rush to complete my professional obligations. I have managed to maintain my composure with greater ease than I anticipated. Jane has not exhibited any outward indications that she is aware of the truth. It is not a situation that I am proud of, but I have continued to sleep in the same bed. I have been somewhat selfish with her recently, feeling as though I am using her, although it may turn out that she has been using me for a significant part of this. I acknowledge that I am not as honorable as some of you may think, and I am ashamed of this small amount of deceit. Please do not worry about Jane getting everything, because she will not. I have provided detailed instructions on how it should be managed. I have made plans in case my health deteriorates sooner than expected or if I pass away unexpectedly. I have also made arrangements for in-home care if it becomes necessary. In the event that home care becomes necessary, Jane will not be my caregiver should I become unable to make decisions. The lawyer will inform Sarah, Steve, and the children while blocking Jane from contacting me. All important documents, valuable items, and such have been relocated to a secure place. I have also begun writing letters to each family member, including Jane. This has proven to be more challenging than I anticipated. Update, mission accomplished. We had an amazing drama-free holiday week, and I have successfully made it to 2023. In this context, it is worth noting that this is the first occasion on which she has been observed to have an affair. Her behavior towards us this entire week has been noticeably different, and it is possible that this has been influenced by the affair. It is interesting to note that the affair seems to have affected her behavior in a way that makes sense when one knows that something is going on. She has been secretive about her phone and has frequently been absent from our family gatherings. The gatherings were an opportunity to obtain some fresh air. The most amusing aspect was when she claimed that she needed to run into town and that one of the grandchildren wanted to join her. The way she twisted and turned to avoid taking the child with her was something to behold. I have to admit that I played along a bit by asking why she couldn't take them. This has led to the affair continuing. Now that I am retired, I inquire about her plans for the day or week, and she proceeds to inform me of her intentions. I then inquire about her plans for the remainder of the week. I suggest meeting for lunch, as we will be in the same area according to our respective schedules. This is merely an attempt to test her resolve. As someone else has observed, unpredictability is the cheater's worst enemy. This morning, I had a meeting. In consultation with my legal counsel, I have taken the initiative to make certain decisions and request the preparation of requisite documentation. I have replaced my provisional will with a new, permanent will, which has been duly signed and is not anticipated to require any further amendments in anticipation of potential complications. In addition, I have instructed my counsel to file divorce papers based on the prenuptial agreement and evidence of the affair. According to the aforementioned papers, she will receive no assets except for 25% of our shared assets, which are primarily composed of household items and furniture, will be retained by me. I will also retain all of my liquid assets, retirement funds, and purchases made with my own funds. In the event that she initiates legal proceedings, she will be required to pay alimony. I have signed the relevant documents and assembled a packet containing all the evidence of the affair, which I intend to use as necessary. I have also sold my loan to the trustees will be permitted to convert the trust into shares in AP's company. With regard to the trust, I have determined my desired mode of management. I will relinquish my role as a trustee and assume the position of a 1% trustee. The majority of the trusteeship will be assumed by the twins, with the remaining portion allocated to the 4 grandchildren. Sarah and Steve will serve as proxies for all the grandchildren. Once each of the children has reached the age of 24, the trusteeship will be transferred from Sarah and Steve to the respective grandchild, provided that there is a remaining fraction. Sarah will receive the additional share. The trusteeship will be voted upon or valued at the meeting scheduled with the children, Sarah and Steve, for next week. At that time, the children will need to sign the relevant documents. It is only fair that they understand the rationale behind these changes. It is important to ensure that all parties understand the rationale behind these changes. Once the process is complete, my personal assets will consist of liquid assets, personal belongings and the proceeds from AP's loan. Even in the most unfavorable circumstances, Jane will receive a relatively modest amount compared to the value of the assets held in the trust. Over the coming weeks, I will distribute the few personal items that I wish to pass on to the aforementioned items are already stored in a secure location accessible by my lawyer. It should be noted that I am not resisting my condition, I am allowing it to run its natural course. I am grateful that I have not experienced any adverse effects from the treatments thus far. However, I have noticed that I have been feeling more tired recently, and my family has also observed this. I attributed the cough to the natural aging process, akin to the typical characteristics of an older individual. However, the persistent cough was the initial indicator of concern, leading to the diagnosis of lung tumors. I initially dismissed the cough as a mere lingering symptom, but I anticipate a rapid decline in my health once other complications arise. By that time, I expect that everyone will be aware of the situation. I am grateful for all the well wishes regarding in terms of my personal objectives. I intend to make the most of my remaining time with my family. I have been considering a longer trip, but I recognize the challenges this would present. This week was therefore a crucial opportunity for me to spend extended time with my loved ones. I am contemplating a shorter trip for myself, but I am yet to make a decision. My next goal is to dedicate a day to spending time with one of them. I am currently unable to proceed with further input. I have now had the opportunity to spend time with each of my children and grandchildren. Today, I was joined by my lawyer and a notary, as well as my twins, Sarah and Steve. We were able to complete the tasks that I had set out to achieve. It is perhaps unsurprising that the family is feeling hurt and angry, given the circumstances. As soon as everyone arrived and saw my lawyer and the notary, it was clear that there was tension in the room. I therefore asked them to take a seat and listen to what I had to say. Once I had finished speaking, I asked them to sign the papers. After that, I addressed any questions that they had. All parties were aware of the trust's existence. I informed them that it was time for me to relinquish control of the trust and hand it over to them. I emphasized the significance of the trust in my life and the reasons behind its establishment. I clarified that it was separate from my marriage to Jane and that it was a mutual decision. I also provided instructions on how I wanted them to manage and utilize the trust. We discussed how the trust would be divided between the twins and the grandchildren, with Sarah and Steve holding equal proxy votes for the grandchildren until each of them turns 25. They demonstrated their confidence in me by affixing their signatures and notarizing the documents. Once this was completed, we proceeded to make copies. I then escorted my lawyer and the notary out. I expressed my gratitude for their willingness to come on a Sunday, and they were both gracious in return. When I returned to the dining room, which had been transformed into a makeshift conference room, everyone was silent. It was my daughter who broke the silence with proceeded to pose a series of questions and thoughts simultaneously as soon as my daughter had finished. I then proceeded to discuss my health, disclosing my diagnosis and listening as they began to discuss plans for fighting this battle. However, I interrupted them at that point, explaining the odds and informing them that I had already sought a second opinion. I then shared with them what you all already know, that I have made the decision not to pursue treatment. I have chosen to let nature take its course. We spent the next hour or so arguing back and forth, at times my daughter even leaving the room and Sarah having to fetch her during those moments. My son Steve and I had a sincere and open conversation, during which we may not fully agree with me, but they do understand where I'm coming from. We reached a consensus that Sarah and Maya have chosen to let nature take its course. We spent the next hour to an hour and a half arguing back and forth. My daughter even left the room, and Sarah had to go fetch her during those moments. My son Steve and I had a sincere and open conversation. They may not fully agree with me, but they do understand where I'm coming from. We reached a consensus that Sarah and Maya, it was anticipated that my daughter would eventually come to terms with the situation once things had calmed down somewhat. It was known that the inevitable question would be forthcoming. They wanted to know when I had found out about my diagnosis. In response, I shared the timeline with them, which led to another wave of anger and sadness. I explained that I wanted to have one more holiday week where I was not seen as a dead man walking. I admitted that it was selfish of me, but I did not want to this diagnosis was perceived as a significant obstacle to their anticipated future holiday experiences. My daughter, in an effort to gain a comprehensive understanding of the situation, assumed the role of a detective, refusing to leave the room until all the details were revealed. She questioned how on earth Jane managed to keep this information from her, prompting me to reveal the final piece of information, which was the first time I truly saw the fire. My daughter's eyes reflected a mixture of anger and disbelief. I then informed them that Jane was unaware of my awareness of her affair. I addressed the same questions and concerns that many of you had previously suggested. I must say that you all prepared me well for this conversation. Ultimately, I expressed to them that I value their presence in my life far more than I do Jane's. All I want now is to spend the remainder of my days in peace and free from any further worries about Jane. I was obliged to explain my actions during the holiday week to them in order to allay their concerns about Jane. They also put together the pieces of Jane stepping outside for fresh air and her reluctance to bring the grandchild along on the trip into town. They were concerned that I had gone through all of this alone. I reassured them that I had support from some friends on social media who helped me get through the toughest moments. However, I was unable to provide them with any further details. I declined to divulge the specifics of my support network, citing the need for privacy. I will provide further details at a later date. However, for the time being, I require a degree of solitude. The emotions were profound, and we have been engaged in intermittent discussions as a group for several hours. I informed them that I needed to redirect the focus to the matter of trust. They are aware that trust will play a pivotal role in preventing Jane from accessing my assets. I have acquired wealth which serves as protection for me. Consequently, she is not part of this meeting. I proceeded to share the financial details of the trust. I believe that they viewed the trust as a way to avoid taxes or simply safeguard assets in a marriage where the children are from another woman. They were not prepared for me to disclose the financials. As I started going through the assets and balance sheets, the room fell silent. There was a period of silence, after which the question was posed, "Why did you work so hard all those years when you had this much?" I proceeded to elucidate my personal philosophy on the management of finances, a subject I have discussed with them on numerous occasions and which they hold in high regard. However, I also informed them that I have been living off the trust for the entirety of this period. This has enabled me to support them through college, to prioritize time with them, and to work for a non-profit organization, essentially for free. I was able to essentially work for a non-profit organization for free thanks to the trust. If there is one example I want to leave behind for them and their children, it is to use this trust to make a positive impact on others, not just by writing occasional checks to charities, but by actively working for causes they genuinely believe in. I have achieved more through training others and building relationships than I could have ever done by simply writing a check. I am not pleased that the lives of those at the table today have been affected in various ways, both positively and negatively, as a result of my actions. While I had hoped for a different outcome, the situation has now been resolved. I have pleaded with them to allow me to handle Jane, but they have refused. It was agreed that the matter of trust would be discussed with no one else present. It was also agreed that the status quo would be maintained for the time being, in the event that my health deteriorated. All parties were in agreement. The next few hours were spent cooking a meal, talking, crying, laughing, and breaking into smaller groups. The group dispersed approximately an hour ago, but I anticipate that the twins will return. I am aware that they will share what is happening with their spouses, as that is simply how they are. I have a great deal of affection for my two in-laws. I had a surprise visit from one of my wife's friends, Carol. She is around the same age as Jane and they were together last week for a girls' night at Carol's house. Jane came home very drunk last week and used a ride share. Carol has been a longtime friend of my wife, and it is interesting that my wife seems to have forgotten that I introduced them. Carol's parents were friends with my parents. It seems that my unpredictable behavior has contributed to my wife's instability during last week's girls' night. Jane reached a breaking point due to excessive alcohol consumption. She confided in Carol about her affair, despite Carol's attempts to intervene. Carol became enraged with her, condemning her actions and sharing more details. The following day, Carol reached out to Jane, who did not remember anything from the previous night. Carol informed her of what she had confessed, but Jane denied having an affair. Furthermore, Jane denied the allegations and claimed that Carol was mistaken and making things up in response. Carol confronted her on this and gave her a week to come clean or else she would tell me herself. Given that Jane continued to deny everything, I had a chance to meet with Carol. We sat down over coffee and Carol gave me a condensed version of Jane's confessions. She was expecting me to be devastated, but I surprised her by telling her that I already knew. I asked her if anyone else was present when Jane made her confession, and it turned out that Carol was the only one. The only individual present at the time was Carol. I inquired as to whether she had informed anyone else of the matter. Carol was displeased by the question and assured me that she would not divulge such information without my prior consent. I apologized for my suspicions and explained that I had my own timeline for dealing with Jane and involving others would complicate matters. Carol understood and was sympathetic. I requested that Carol not mention anything to anyone, allowing Jane to believe that she believes her. Carol agreed. To the initial request, she responded with a degree of unease regarding the second part. I encouraged her to proceed with the experiment and reassured her that I would be fine. She stated that she would be available to assist me with any further needs. I acknowledged that I would have to apologize again when Carol learned of my health condition. However, I would address this matter at a later date. Tomorrow, I intend to confront Jane. I have scheduled a regular date night, during which I will calmly inform her of my condition and my plans for the remainder of my life. It is my hope that being in a public setting will minimize any dramatic reactions, whether the situation goes according to plan or turns into a total disaster. I will provide an update sometime this weekend after the confrontation. My plan is to share with her what I know and ask her not to contact me or my family. We will see how it unfolds. Update: Jane and I have our weekly date night. We usually go to the same restaurant. We have even established a regular table there. It is towards the back, still part of the public space, but away from the main dining area. From the lively atmosphere near the bar, I determined that this would be an optimal setting to confront her. I intend to do so after we conclude our dessert. I made my lawyer's reservation at the same time before we even began our meal. I discreetly paid for both our parties' meals and informed our longtime server about it. I had Carol on standby to assist Jane after I left. My plan was to conclude the meal with a conversation about our relationship, which I intended to record. Then I would confront Jane and share with her the contents of the recording. My knowledge of her actions allows me to diagnose her and to plan for the future, while also requesting that she refrain from contacting me or my family and visiting the farm. I wanted to ensure that the letter was witnessed, and I also planned to leave her a briefcase filled with evidence and the divorce papers. Afterwards, I would simply get up and walk away. I expected her to avoid making a scene to protect her social status. I made sure to record our conversation, during which Jane expressed how wonderful our relationship was. Over the course of our relationship, Jane lauded our collaborative efforts and the strength of our bond. I then inquired as to whether I had treated her well and whether I had ever mistreated or hurt her in any way. She responded with a definitive negative. I then confronted her about the reasons behind her infidelity. She claimed ignorance about what Carol may have told me and insisted that Carol was mistaken. I informed her that I had already known about her infidelity even before Carol mentioned it. In that moment, it seemed as though Jane's prepared defenses were in place. Her complexion lost its usual coloration, and she was rendered speechless. She merely nodded in assent, visibly disconcerted. The self-assured and proud woman she had been moments earlier appeared to undergo a transformation, becoming like a deer caught in the headlights. She was unable to respond to my statements. I then proceeded to elucidate how I hastened home after my appointment with the doctor, cognizant that I was compelled to engage in a difficult conversation with the individual I needed to speak with. I proceeded to describe. Upon arrival, I observed that his vehicle was parked outside. I reviewed the surveillance footage and noted that the cameras were set to privacy mode. At that point, I decided to proceed to the farm. I informed her that I still had video evidence and she was about to ask how, but I raised my hand to signal her to let me finish. I then revealed my diagnosis and my decision not to fight the illness. I observed sadness in her eyes, which frustrated me. I was perplexed by her emotional response. Nevertheless, I proceeded and then indicated to the waitress, who proceeded to retrieve my lawyer from the vicinity. Both of them subsequently joined us at the table. My lawyer then provided me with a briefcase and a folder containing a letter. I informed her that I did not wish her to contact me, my family, or visit the farm after I had departed that evening. I then signed the letter and requested that the server act as a witness to this act. The server and lawyer then stood as witnesses as I handed the letter to Jane. I subsequently thanked them and dismissed them. I then provided the briefcase to Jane, making it clear that I was aware of the contents. I disclosed a greater extent of information than I had initially anticipated. I revealed that the briefcase contained divorce papers that had already been signed by me, which she could sign to initiate the divorce process. I explained that I did not anticipate surviving a contested divorce and that she could continue residing at her home in town as long as I was alive. Meanwhile, I would be at the farm. I emphasized that I would not be seeing her after tonight. I made it clear that I did not want to hear any excuses and informed Jane that I had called Carol. In order to assist her in getting home, true to her character, Jane maintained her composure in public. She was able to utter a brief but, I reminded her, I was leaving and that I was done. I approached the server and left her a generous tip. I then sought out the owner of the restaurant to apologize for not giving him a heads up about the situation. As I made my way out, I noticed my son standing by the door with Carol. Carol passed by me with a brief smile, but her eyes showed concern for Jane. My son retrieved my truck. On Friday night, my son and his wife drove me to the farm. My son and his wife stayed with me until midnight. Eventually, I convinced them to go home, as I went to sleep with a sense of relief. However, I also felt a renewed sense of loss. Despite that, I was able to accomplish the task I needed to do on Saturday. The family gathered at the farm to check up on me and make sure I was doing okay. I must admit that I felt a bit pampered. However, it turned out to be a good day. In the afternoon, Carol paid me a visit. She informed me that Jane informed me that she had experienced a significant breakdown on Friday night and had contacted her affair partner on Saturday during their conversation. Jane subsequently realized that she had been used by the affair partner and was in a state of distress. Carol made it clear that Jane had not requested her assistance in contacting me, but that she believed that if I were to speak with Jane for a brief period, it might provide her with the strength to maintain her distance from me. Carol is adept at making her requests in a manner that resonates with me, and I reluctantly agreed to meet with her for a 2. During a 1-hour discussion at the farm, I made it clear that I would have someone there to support me and that Jane could choose someone to be there for her as well. The intention was to have a civilized conversation where I would not tolerate being blamed, minimized, or have the blame shifted onto me. The purpose of this meeting was for Jane to find answers on how to move forward. This morning, we had the meeting. Jane decided to bring Carol along, which I am unsure of the reason for. Perhaps it was for damage control, and I chose my daughter to be by my side. I wanted the atmosphere to be as I endeavored to ensure that Jane would be as comfortable as possible throughout the meeting, with the aim of removing her from my life permanently. The meeting proceeded in accordance with my expectations. Jane expressed remorse, apologized, and attempted to minimize the significance of the affair. However, I was not convinced by her explanations. I made it clear that she would have a place to live until my death, but that the decision regarding the house would be made by the trustees. I also informed her that she would not receive any inheritance from my estate or the trust. Nevertheless, she expressed her confidence that she would be financially secure. It is necessary to consider the financial implications of her pension and her own trust. I feel the need to express my frustration at her audacity in asking why I am unwilling to fight for her or our relationship. I was on the verge of losing my temper, but I managed to control my emotions and simply replied that I no longer care about her or our relationship. This response had a profound impact on her. I believe it is important to express my feelings in this way. My anger here is directed at the mindset of a selfish cheater who only cares about themselves. Even after causing significant distress to another person, they still expect that person to fight for them. I refuse to engage in such futile behavior. I was not worth fighting for against her own desires and greed. I regret that I was not able to provide the answer she wanted, but looking back, I suspect that she did not actually want them. I do not want any more meetings. They simply distract me from what I need to do. Jane and Carol left, but Carol came back a couple of hours later. We had a quick chat. It turns out that the other person involved in the affair received a notice from the trustees. They are planning to convert the loan into shares of his company. Since the trust will be the majority owner, they are requesting a thorough forensic audit. My daughter, who has an MBA, wasted no time in taking action. It seems that when Jane sought comfort from him, she realized what I already suspected. He was using her to see if she could buy the loan from me. There were some offhand comments in the recordings that made me suspicious of his intentions. Now, my daughter, who holds an MBA, promptly initiated legal proceedings upon receipt of a notice from the trustees informing her that they intend to convert the loan into shares of her father's company. This is due to the fact that the trust will be the majority owner. In addition, they have requested a thorough forensic audit. My daughter, who has an MBA, wasted no time in taking action. It seems that when Jane sought comfort from her father, she realized what I had already suspected, that he was using her to ascertain whether she could purchase the loan from me. There were some offhand comments in the recordings that made me suspicious of his intentions. Now, with the paperwork filed, my daughter is aware that I sold the loan to the trust. Jane is no longer a part of my life, as she is no longer useful to him. He made that clear to her. Additionally, Jane informed Carol that her trust fund has run out. She will only have her pension income to rely on. Furthermore, Jane believed that life with AP would be more glamorous than with me. He genuinely believes that he is wealthier than I am. He drives expensive cars, dines at upscale restaurants, and flies first class. In contrast, my husband works on his farm, drives an old truck, and we fly economy. She had been planning to divorce me when he expressed his eternal love and desire to marry her. This is a source of great distress to me. I am curious to observe how her greed and superficiality will manifest. I will not be present to witness it, but I anticipate that my family will inform her of the value I brought to the relationship. I am grateful that her true nature was revealed, allowing me to address her and spare my family from her. Carol presented me with an unexpected development, catching me off guard. She informed me that, given my independence, I should consider her as a potential companion. I questioned her, wondering why any woman would want to spend time with me, given my diagnosis. I assumed there was no long-term potential. She replied that just because Jane was ignorant and didn't appreciate what she had, it doesn't mean that other divorced or widowed women wouldn't be lining up to spend the time I have left with me. She insisted that I'm an incredible man and any time spent with me would be treasured. According to her, there would be plenty of women eager to be in my company, and she might as well be first in line. I raised a concern, saying, but most of them won't know that Jane and I are separated. She assured me that Jane doesn't. I informed her that I would consider her proposal, which she accepted with a smile and a kiss on the cheek. I reflected on the offer, but ultimately decided that I did not want that kind of complication in my life. The current situation presents a certain degree of complexity in my life. Overall, I am managing well. It has been a challenging period, to say the least. Currently, I require a few days of solitude and tranquility. In due course, the social circles will become aware of both the dissolution of my marriage and my diagnosis. At that point, I will have to face the consequences. The cessation of the flow of people sending me their well wishes was inevitable, although I had hoped to avoid it for longer. However, I am unwilling to be treated differently. Update: let us discuss Jane. She has disappeared from the scene. Her reputation in the community has taken a nosedive. Once people found out about her actions, she was politely asked to step down from her leadership positions. Her social circle has been openly critical of her, questioning whether she pursued their husbands. She has made a few attempts to reach out to me, but I have not responded. I replied on a couple of occasions, using intermediaries. I simply informed the individual that I had said everything I needed to say and that I was aware of all the relevant information. I have no interest in her desire for closure, as I am not concerned about her selfish need for it. She is aware of my feelings, as I have made it clear to her some of the details of the affair, which lasted for at least 6 months. During this period, they went on 3 trips together, during which they behaved like newlyweds on one occasion and celebrated a 20-year wedding anniversary on another. On the occasion of their wedding anniversary, they coincidentally stayed at the same hotel. It seems as though fate was at play. Playing was part of their dynamic. She chose to use my house because she felt comfortable there, and it was secluded from the road, making it difficult for people to see the cars in the driveway. She even purchased a second car and kept it in a town parking garage when she visited the AP's house. She would swap cars so that no one would recognize her vehicle. She was genuinely concerned about the potential consequences of her actions. It is evident that she was concerned about the perception of her social circle regarding these events. Her actions demonstrate the lengths she went to in order to avoid detection. These actions serve to reinforce my beliefs about the situation and my subsequent actions. I have no regrets about my conduct. The drunken confession to Carol was not solely due to my unpredictable behavior. It transpired that as soon as the trust received notice of my sale of AP's loan, he began to distance himself from Jane. It may be surmised that the pressure of almost being apprehended and the loss of interest on the part of AP in her led to Jane becoming inebriated and divulging the full extent of the situation to Carol. The subsequent events that befell me were, it may be presumed, inevitable. It is evident that AP had ulterior motives for being involved in the affair, but that this does not exonerate Jane in any way, it merely serves to highlight her pitiful nature. It appears that AP sought Jane's assistance in obtaining a loan from me, while Jane herself was driven by a desire for a luxurious lifestyle financed by AP's money. It is intriguing to observe how those of a less scrupulous nature tend to gravitate towards one another. If those of us who espouse moral values allow the morally bankrupt to form partnerships, it may lead to the emergence of more suitable alliances. I extend my apologies to those who adhere to the principle of working. In terms of reconciliation based on loyalty, this was not a viable option for me. AP is discontented about my daughter's intentions, and it seems likely that he will attempt to prevent her from pursuing this course of action in court. The only consequence he may face is the loss of further financial resources. I have heard suggestions that he has been attempting to secure funds from other investors to repay the loan, but unfortunately for him, information about his actions has already begun to emerge. Information is being disseminated among my business contacts. I previously stated that investment should be made in individuals, not just companies. There is currently minimal interest in investing in him. My daughter's plans for his company are unclear, but it employs a significant number of people, so she will work hard to ensure its continuity for their sake. She is concerned that AP may have something questionable. An investigation is underway into the company's financial records for the benefit of the employees. It is hoped that any irregularities can be rectified. I am still here, but it has been a challenging period. I am now back home, but I spent a few days in hospital. I was found unconscious, but thankfully I was still breathing, so they took me to the ER, despite my having a do not resuscitate order. I never actually passed away. I have always held a strong aversion to hospitals, but now that I have been diagnosed with a terminal illness, I have developed a profound dislike for being in such a place. I do not wish to die in a hospital. I have been back home for a while now, but I am unable to drive off the farm. The doctors have advised me not to drive, even on the farm. However, I am determined to continue with my daily chores and to enjoy the beauty of the sunrise and sunset for as long as I am able. I also have full time spent at home with healthcare workers, or as I jokingly refer to them, babysitters. However, I am reluctant to engage in debate with my family about this decision. In essence, I do not recall anything until I woke up in the hospital. At that time, my family and Carol were present in the room with me. By that point, I was stable, and the doctors simply wished to observe me for a day or two. Throughout the majority of the time I had either one of my twins Sarah or Carol by my side. Additional tests were conducted to ensure my well-being. On one occasion, when I was alone in my room, I was awakened by Jane. It appeared that she had gained access to the ward by persuading a duty nurse to allow her in. Despite my fatigue, she attempted to portray herself as a devoted and caring individual. I am uncertain as to why, but upon realizing that she was holding my hand and stroking my head, I pulled away. She was visibly hurt by this and then began to apologize, stating that she did not mean the things she had said to him and that she was merely using him. I remained silent, which further upset her. She then demanded that I speak to her, which I did not do. Jane raised her voice just enough to attract the attention of the nurse, who observed her behavior and my discomfort. The nurse handled the situation with composure, requesting that Jane wait outside while she conducted some routine checks. Once Jane had left the room and the door was closed, the nurse inquired as to my well-being. I informed her that Jane was my former partner. My wife, and there should be notes in my file stating that she is not allowed to visit the nurse. The nurse apologized and asked me what she could do to minimize my stress. I requested that she call my emergency contacts. She did so, and approximately 45 minutes later, Sarah, my daughter, and Carol walked into the room. By that time, Jane had returned, but was speaking quietly and still spewing her nonsense. Once Jane saw them, she knew it was time to leave. I calmly requested that she just go, explaining that the other patients did not deserve her causing a scene. I asked her to stop thinking about herself and just leave. It would be advisable to cease dwelling on the matter and simply depart. I am appreciative that she departed in an amicable manner, although she did so by swiftly kissing me on the forehead. I pulled back slightly, but if I am to endure this for the sake of maintaining peace among the other patients, then so be it. The women in my life expressed genuine regret and offered their apologies. In my view, it is unfair to blame them for this incident. They have their own lives to attend to, and they all worked out a schedule to ensure that I would not be left alone again. It is likely that my daughter thanked the nurse for contacting them while also expressing her anger towards the staff for allowing Jane. Despite clear instructions not to, this incident serves to reinforce the fact that Jane is in a state of desperation and is grasping at any opportunity. I am not someone special to her, she only sees me as a means to stay afloat. Every time I interact with Jane, I can see how dark and empty her soul truly is. AP is still the same, he always was. His accounting department has caught on to what is happening. In meetings with my daughter, they have pretty much spilled the beans. There is no evidence of criminal behavior on AP's part in his business. It is clear that he was taking advantage of every perk and loophole. To enhance his income at the expense of the company's financial stability, he has been attempting to undermine the company's profitability. When my daughter assumes control, she may reduce his ownership stake by 60%. This is a significant concern for him. It is possible that she may even dismiss him entirely, relegating him to a minority shareholder position. His lavish lifestyle is likely to be significantly impacted. He has threatened legal action, but has not yet taken any action. His credit and reputation in the area may be irreparably damaged. Carol has become a regular presence in my life, and I must admit that I enjoy her company. The company and companionship of the aforementioned individual may be slowly winning me over. She has been staying over at my place several days a week. I hope to recover quickly, but since I can no longer drive, I will have to rely on others more. This is a new experience for me. Carol has enthusiastically offered to help me in this regard. To address any assumptions, there is nothing romantic happening between us apart from sitting closely together. I would like to take this opportunity to provide an update. My father passed away last week. I have been reading his posts and comments whenever I get the chance. In the past few days, I can hear his voice so clearly, and he requested that I convey a letter from him to my Reddit family. If you are reading this letter, it signifies that my tenure here is drawing to a close, as many of you had suggested. I composed letters and videos for all of my family members while engaging with your posts. I began referring to you all as my Reddit family, which prompted me to write one final letter to all of you. I wish to express my gratitude for your support and advice. This brief period of time has been profoundly meaningful to me, and it will undoubtedly have a lasting impact on my life. Even after my demise, my family will have benefited from the completion of my final gift to myself and my family. Without the platform to share my thoughts and receive support, I would have had to rely solely on my family, which would have meant giving up on my goal. While my family may not yet see it as a gift, they will in the future. I cannot express enough how much I enjoyed creating those little videos. Thanks to all of you, my family will have another small piece of me. I would not have made any of those silly videos without your suggestions and encouragement. I would not have considered this on my own. I have one request of all of you. My family will be experiencing a range of emotions. I understand that by sharing my story, you all desire closure. However, please respect their need to grieve and limit requests for updates. I have requested that they share this letter with you. If they feel comfortable, they may provide a final update on Jane. The decision to do so is entirely up to them. I have made this request and kindly asked for your patience in this matter. Finally, I want to send my best wishes to all of you. From the great beyond, I extend my love. It is important to remember that none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. It is crucial to remain true to oneself and to be kind to those around you. I hope that none of you have to endure the same struggles that I faced, but if you do, I will be there to support you in any way I can. Each and every one of you is of immense value, and it is imperative that you never allow anyone to make you believe otherwise. I will be sending virtual hugs from wherever I end up. Expressing gratitude sometimes feels insufficient, but it is the best I can do right now. Thank you. I hope that we will meet again in the afterlife, but not too soon. Thank you.